right, and welcome back to another UML Operator Extra, and we need to do this one today. All right, I want to say, oops, I think I messed up and left some important subjects out in this conversation. You need to make your modeling as productive and efficient as possible for not only yourself, but all of your stakeholders. So we have talked about search in multiple videos over the past year or so. And in the last couple of months, I published a couple of videos referring to search capabilities and how you might manage your search window, where you put it that's most productive for you. We've gone over some scripts, some sample scripts to help find things, find your intelligence and so on. But one of the things I didn't talk about was as you create your My Searches, because all of your custom searches are put under My Searches and are only relevant to your instance. If you're in a team repository, the rest of the team doesn't see your search scripts, statements, or any of your queries. They don't see those. So we're going to talk about that today. We're also going to talk about naming conventions, because this can get chaotic and unorganized and hard to find your scripts very fast if you're not following the same best practices you should be using in all of your other software development. So let's get into it. When you install Sparx the first time, everything is factory and canned. You do not have any custom reports, scripts, SQL, or anything that's custom. So you have to bring those in as reference data. We've shown you how to do that before. I'll try to put a link in the description below. When you're on or in a Team SQL environment, the team doesn't see the same things like searches that you do unless they import those items into their personal instance. Now, they'll see the scripts and they'll see documents and reports, but they will not see your search statements, SQL queries that you build. So the only way to do that is to export them and then share them with others, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Planning what tooling you're using should be treated just like any other planning exercise around requirements to deliver your software systems. Show how your tooling is going to be used in your communication plan. Your project manager will run that. They'll have a communication plan, certainly with a lot more than this in it. They'll have things like search, Sparx automation, and so on. They, just like any other delivery, they may produce a Kanban to take the requirements that are necessary on what's going to be developed for the project, what's in progress, or what's even already done, and then write the requirements for that, just like you would anything else that you're dealing with in software delivery. So here we have requirements showing that these have already been implemented, and potentially you can put the code in there if you want as part of your documentation, but make sure that you're planning your SQL and you're following the same practices you do for any other technical requirement within your organization or your project. Each modeler should have their own dev or sandbox environment where they can practice, learn, and build the tools that are necessary for them to do their job. And if those tools are valuable, they'll be picked up by the project later on. So they may have the ability to focus in on particular tooling. They can write requirements that are necessary for delivery of their tooling that they want. They may sketch out, in this particular case, some SQL that they want to use or test, and they'll have their own environment to play with the tools that they're creating and then share those with others. So it's very important to make sure that you're not doing things in the team environment. We do not want to mess things up. That just like with code, you have a dev, you have a stage, and then you have a production release. All right. So in your dev environment, you do the things that are necessary for you to accomplish what you're looking to accomplish. And then if others wish to see those tools for themselves, then they go through governance, they go through a release process, testing, security, all of that, and then are brought in to the team environment for reuse. While your own personal sandbox may be on your local drive or a shared drive specifically for you that others could possibly collaborate and share with you, your staging environment is specific to your governance team. It's the model administrators and people that approve the code that you may be writing for the overall project. So it's important to follow the same standards, the same naming conventions, and ensure that you're keeping them as short, the file names as short and concise as possible. Even the SQL names is short. So I would not go over 40 or 45 characters in length. It seems to fit fine within the window that you see here. So when you're writing your requirements, you want to make sure that you are using the name that you're going to use, as well as the official name that is going to be used in the production environment. So as they move through stage and then they eventually are approved, then they're deployed into production by the model administrator or stakeholders that are authorized to implement certain tools, practices, and process approaches. So in this example, we have a file share that's just my own sandbox. And let's say I write some automated scripts or some SQL that I want to get approved by governance. I would simply, just like code, I would move it from my sandbox into a governance staging area. And if they approved it for deployment, it would go through the release cycles, just like code, into the production environment for the project team to use within their own implementations. So in naming conventions, use short noun verb phrases to define them. So in this convention here, we're seeing that these SQL searches are for design. These are for solution. And you could have business, you could have security, you could have testing, many other types. So when you deploy them and you're following the naming convention, they become very easy to follow. So in this case, we've got a couple of design SQLs. We have a couple of solution SQLs. This is testing. I like to use, because it's in alphabetical order, I like to have these available. Now, my environment looks completely different than any other installation, I want to say, or instance of Sparx for other users. So I have various test areas that I create for custom SQL that I'm building necessary to accomplish specific tasks. So I might go into a test area, my dev, I might create various SQL approaches for mining data, and then eventually they turn into a utility, they turn into Z experimental. And the reason I use Z, again, this is alphabetical order. I want my experimental searches to be at the bottom of the list. I want my primary searches to be at the top of the list. So design, solution, this is my sandbox for testing. I have utility SQL scripts that I write for doing various things that I believe are important in delivery. And then I may share those with others if they're interested or what have you. So my searches and then organized by name makes it very easy to manage and find and effectively use your SQL statements, your SQL queries, whether they're simple or they're complex. Just like code or anything else, it's very important to back up your work. So in the find a project, let's go to it again. So in find a project, we're just going to model. you have an option here that you can hit where it's export search. You get this dialog box that has all of the search queries that are available in your tool. So when you're using a naming convention, it becomes easier to find, hey, I'm interested in design. All right, so I can go down here and I can say, I want to export design. Hey, I want to export, let's say, solutions. Very easy. This is a very long list to find your SQL, your queries that you're using in my search, as well as if you want to share your test, you can do that. You can do these individually or in groups. You could create something that says, this is a backup of all my utilities. So you can select those, all right? Clear, come through and say, I want a backup and I want to share just my utility queries that are here. So I'll just go through, grab all of those. And then when you hit OK, you can put them in a place that you want to share. So the bottom line is you're going to go to your sandbox first. So this is my sandbox. The naming convention you're going to use, my searches, because you want that to be unique, by UMLO. And then you can say something like, these are utility only. Utility, and then make sure you're versioning. So we're going to use a date, whatever versioning convention you want to use. And there you go. Now you've got that backed up, just your utility because of the naming convention that you used in order to share with others. So we go back out, we go to my sandbox. There's what we just saved, and we can share this with others. We can move this to governance for release to others. We can move it to a shared folder to share amongst your team, etc. Then in your staging environment, now this is not a good example because your searches are actually part of your, in this case, Windows registry. So that's how Sparx keeps these. That's why they're not part of reference data or they're brought in. Wish they were, but they're not, right? So anyways, they would go out, I already have them here. They would choose import. They would go to the governance staging area. You would have moved your file, your export XML to that area for their approval. They would hit open, and then those searches would be installed to their environment where they can run through testing, right? And then they may empty their registry or delete these searches as they've been approved, and they move to a production environment or release. Now, what we've talked about doesn't apply to reporting templates, all right? So if we go to our resources, let's just pick one, Project Stakeholder Report. When we open this report, we have a fragment in here and that has a table for stakeholders. And if we go over here and we look at the properties, the document options, there's a custom SQL query in here. This is embedded in this report. Therefore, when this report is shared via RTF imports and exports, so if the project team goes out and they import reference data and these reports are included when they're sharing the reference data, all stakeholders will pick up the necessary query. So let's just go over and test this. We're going to hit F8. We're choosing the template project stakeholders. We're going to go out to our repository. We're just going to call it project stakeholders. Go ahead and step on the previous version, generate, yes, replace it, and here we go. So this query will work regardless of what is in my searches, right? So that's the difference. You want to share your searches. These are maintained, all of this SQL is maintained separately than SQL that is embedded in scripts automation, and we'll get into that in later sessions, as well as templates that are brought into projects. All right. All right, we're going to wrap up here. I just wanted to get this video out, rather urgent. I just left the development shop where they went out over the weekend and created a dozen or so SQL scripts that showed up in their searches, and they wanted to show them off today and then couldn't find what they wanted to share. And yeah, it wasn't organized. I'm not going to mention who it was, of course, but I wanted to get this out to the rest of you. If you're going to invest time in building your own searches, be organized like you are in your development code, right? Make it easy for you and others to find your code, find your SQL to reuse, all right? So I'm very interested, do you use search in Sparx? How do you use search in Sparx, right? And then are your practices repeatable and defined? Just like hopefully you're doing with your code. All right. So I want to make sure that you're posting questions, concerns, and comments down below. Let us know. All right. We're very interested in solving those issues and sharing with others. All right. So thanks again for watching this video. And until the next episode, happy modeling.